Well, good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. And let's go ahead and wrap up this week's episodes, actually this whole 8-week series of episodes, with a Silmarillion Saturday. Now, these Saturdays are our chance to revisit the history and legends of the Elder Days, whether they're from the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, or the Great Tales. Now, last week we read the first part of the chapter of Aulë and Yavanna, exploring the differences between Aulë's disobedience and Melkor's rebellion. Today we're going to finish the chapter focusing a bit more on Yavanna and her role in this tale. Now when Aulë labored in the making of the Dwarves, he kept this work hidden from the other Valar. But at last he opened his mind to Yavanna and told her of all that had come to pass. Then Yavanna said to him, "Eru is merciful. Now I see that thy heart rejoiceth, as indeed it may, for thou hast received not only forgiveness, but bounty. Yet because thou hiddest this thought from me until its achievement, thy children will have little love for the things of my love. They will love first the things made by their own hands, as doth their father. They will delve in the earth, and the things that grow and live upon the earth they will not heed. Many a tree shall feel the bite of their iron without pity." But Aulë answered, "That shall also be true of the children of Iluvatar, for they will eat and they will build. And though the things of thy realm have worth in themselves, and would have worth if no children were to come, yet Eru will give them dominion, and they shall use all that they find in Arda, though not by the purpose of Eru, without respect or without gratitude." "Not unless Melkor darken their hearts," said Yavanna. And she was not appeased, but grieved in heart, fearing what might be done upon Middle-earth in days to come. Therefore she went before Manwe, and she did not betray the counsel of Aulë, but she said, "King of Arda, is it true, as Aulë hath said to me, that the children, when they come, shall have dominion over all the things of my labor, to do as they will therewith?" "It is true," said Manwe. "But why dost thou ask? For thou hadst no need of the teaching of Aulë?" Then Yavanna was silent, and looked into her own thought, and she answered, "Because my heart is anxious, thinking of the days to come. All my works are dear to me. Is it not enough that Melkor should have marred so many? Shall nothing that I have devised be free from the dominion of others?" "If thou hadst thy will, what wouldst thou reserve?" said Manwe. "Of all thy realm, what dost thou hold dearest?" "All have their worth," said Yavanna, "and each contributes to the worth of the others. But the Kelvar can flee or defend themselves, whereas the Olvar that grow cannot. And among these I hold trees dear. Long in the growing, swift shall they be in the felling, and unless they pay toll with fruit upon bough, little mourned in their passing. So I see in my thought. Would that the trees might speak on behalf of all things that have roots, and punish those that wrong them." "This is a strange thought," said Manwe. "Yet it was in the song," said Yavanna. "For while thou wert in the heavens, and with Ulmo built the clouds, and poured out the rains, I lifted up the branches of great trees to receive them, and some sang to Iluvatar amid the wind and the rain." Then Manwe sat silent, and the thought of Yavanna that she had put into his heart grew and unfolded, and it was beheld by Iluvatar. Then it seemed to Manwe that the song rose once more about him, and he heeded now many things therein that, though he had heard them, he had not heeded before. And at last the vision was renewed, but it was not now remote, for he was himself within it, and yet he saw that all was upheld by the hand of Iluvatar. And the hand entered in, and from it came forth many wonders that had until then been hidden from him in the hearts of the Ainur. Then Manwe awoke, and he went down to Yavanna upon a Zelohar, and he sat beside her beneath the two trees, and Manwe said, "O Kementari, Eru hath spoken, saying, do then any of the Valar suppose that I did not hear all the song, even the least sound of the least voice? Behold, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will awake also, and it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the Kelvar and the Olvar, and some will dwell therein and be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared. For a time, while the firstborn are in their power, and while the secondborn are young. But dost thou not now remember, Kementari, that thy thought sang not always alone? Did not thy thought and mine meet also, so that we took wing together like great birds that soar above the clouds? That also shall come to be by the heed of Iluvatar, and before the children awake, there shall go forth with wings like the wind the eagles of the lords of the west. Then Yavanna was glad, and she stood up, reaching her arms towards the heavens, and she said, High shall climb the trees of Kementari, that the eagles of the king may house therein. But Manwe rose also, and it seemed that he stood to such a height that his voice came down to Yavanna as from the paths of the winds. Nay, he said, only the trees of Aulë will be tall enough. In the mountains the eagles shall house, and hear the voices of those who call upon us. But in the forests shall walk the shepherds of the trees. Then Manwe and Yavanna parted for that time, and Yavanna returned to Aulë, and he was in his smithy, pouring molten metal into a mold. Eru is bountiful, she said. Now let thy children beware, for there shall walk a power in the forests whose wrath they will arouse at their peril. Nonetheless, they will have need of wood, said Aulë, and he went on with his smithwork. Well, well. When Aulë gets to stop sleeping on the couch for that comment, he and Yavanna are going to have their work cut out for them. This is such a great conclusion to this chapter. Not only do we discover that Aulë hid his work from Iluvatar, but they hid his work from his wife. And that had consequences, just like everything else in this story. And then we get this bit about the dominion of the children, which frankly terrifies Yavanna. She goes to see the boss and see if at least some of her work might receive special protection. And that is where the Ents and the Eagles come from, folks. If you've not read the Silmarillion before, that is the kind of stuff you can expect to find in its covers. Great stories on their own, but stories that also shed tremendous light on the parts of the legendarium that you're already familiar with. Now, there's a lot more to talk about, but that's going to be it for today's Silmarillion Saturday and for this first 8-week series of today's Tolkien Times. Come back for more of the Elder Days every Saturday as we open up the pages of Middle-earth history. And if there is a first or second age story that you want to hear me read and discuss, please let me know by emailing barnabin@theprancingponypodcast.com. If these few minutes leave you wanting more Tolkien content, well, that's why you need to check out the Prancing Pony Podcast. We've spent 7 years walking through the books, including the first 50 or so episodes just on the Silmarillion. And speaking of the Prancing Pony Podcast, be sure to check out the new episode tomorrow. Sean Gunner, chair of the Tolkien Society and guest host earlier this season, returns for a short 2-episode run as we cover The Last Debate. It is hard to believe we're getting so close to the end of Book 5. Finally, enjoy the next 2 weeks off here on the TTT and come back on Monday, July 24th as we start another 8-week series of today's Tolkien Times with a Mailbag Monday. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, follow or subscribe on your podcast app to make sure each episode gets downloaded to your device, and follow @Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.